You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Writing Community Chat Show. It's amazing to be back here. We have had a week where we didn't have a show, and that feels like ages ago now, so I'm so excited to be back in the seat and to chat to Chris Hooley, who is sat by my side, virtually of course. But in just 2 weeks, we will be live at the Harrogate Crime Writers Festival. That is coming around super quick, and we're very excited. We had a little update on that yesterday, so we can talk about some stuff. How are you doing, Chris?
Yeah, good, Daggett. You?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a good couple of weeks. Busy as always, as you know. We both are busy behind the scenes. My little one's got a bit of a sickness bug, so that's not great at the moment. But luckily, the rest of it feeling all right. I have my Friday beer and get to chat to you guys and people in the chat. Hello to Halo, Anna, and Anya. Thank you for tuning in with us live. We hope you're doing well. Let us know how you're getting on. But what about you, Chris? What have you been up to in the last 2 weeks?
I got a clicker.
Please explain.
So I was scrolling through TikTok one day and I saw this booktuber, and someone asked her a question that was, how do you get through so many books, like reading them? And she says, it's easy, I've got a clicker. And she shows this, she's got a Kindle on an arm, and then she just sits back and chills out and she clicks her clicker. So it turns the pages. So when I saw that, I was like, I need to get me one of those. So now in my bed, I've got literally one of these extendable arms that swings around like a little screen that you get in a hospital with my Kindle on. And I can just lie in bed and click my clicker. So
instead
I'm
of
excited.
Physically swiping the page on the virtual page.
Yeah, and not holding it, not holding a book, which I have a medical reason why, because I feel like I'm getting carpal tunnel syndrome in both my hands, in my wrists. So for me, holding a physical book afterwards, it was becoming quite painful. So I was like, I'm going to get a clicker. And it's great. I've read 3 books since I've had it, and I've only had it for
I must say, Chris, that is possibly the oldest thing you've ever told me.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. I'm only 34, but I
welcome
like
to the Middle Ages. Yeah, exactly. You've got 6 years till get to my age, and things hit much more at my age. But yeah, it does sound quite cool. I'll have to have a look at that. Although I don't think I'd go for something like that. But maybe you should do a little video and we'll pitch it, and we'll put an affiliate link up and see if we can get some people to buy that.
No, I mean, to be fair, everyone I've told said they've said it's the saddest thing ever, but I really like it. So,
yep. Brilliant. Yeah. So I had a little meeting with Jamie from Pan Macmillan yesterday, and the shock hit me that in fact it was only 2 weeks away until we go to the Harrogate Crime Writers Festival. I'm very excited about that, Chris. We're going to have a few interviews like we did last year. There's a couple of events happening where we are not required to interview, but we can stay around and film. We're invited to the reception drinks, which is going to be very cool. I have heard that Mr. Richard Osmond, will be there in the Pan Macmillan tent. We won't be interviewing, but he'll be doing a giveaway. So we might be able to get to chat to him. We'll see if we can get a little recording with him. Better than last year when I just walked up to him and said, wow, you're huge. I think I'll try a different approach this year. But yeah, so looking forward to Chris. I hope you are as well. And we'll have some good conversations and a few beers.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary that it's only 2 weeks because I made homemade brownies today. And I wouldn't have done that if I knew it was only 2 weeks away.
Yeah, you've been working very hard on your diet.
Yeah, I think so. I was looking actually at me at the start of the show, and I'm thinking, well, one, I've obviously lost some hair, but I'm like nearly 3 stone lighter now in comparison.
Wow.
So yeah. trying.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
We definitely need to re-record the intro to that show because we both look very different, and I agree. I don't like looking at those videos, so we'll have to re-record that. Yeah. Okay. Everybody, please let us know in the comments how your last 2 weeks have been. If you've been writing a lot and how that's been going. I know we've had some conversations in our writers group. There's some brilliant writings being updated. I have got a little bit put in there, but not much. So hopefully I'll get more of a chance this weekend to get back in the writing as well. It's good to have that motivation and support from you guys. Thank you to everybody that's in that writing group and supporting each other like the way they are. I think it is a great idea, Chris. That was your idea, and it's working really well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, let us know. And if you have been writing, again, let us know what you've been writing and if it's working for you. So you ready for tonight's, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to chat to Holly. We get guests on a little bit before the show starts, and sometimes you have a chat with a guest and you think, yeah, this is going to be a really good show. And today is one of those days.
It is. It is. We've already asked and answered some very unusual questions, and we love those on the show. So we found out that Chris's favorite color is green, as is Holly's, who's coming on the show, and mine is blue. So there you go. Something you might not have known. What is your favorite color? Again, let us know. I'm going to introduce tonight's guest, and please help me in giving her a nice warm welcome. So here we go. Tonight, we are thrilled to have a very special guest with us. She is a powerhouse in the world of young adult fiction, a champion for neurodiversity, and an inspiration to writers and readers alike. From crafting her own books out of cereal boxes as a child, to becoming the best-selling author of the phenomenal Geek Girl series, which I love, by the way, her journey is nothing short of extraordinary. Her debut children's novel became the #1 young adult title in the UK, winning the prestigious Waterstones YA Book Prize and selling millions of copies in over 30 languages. Her path to success has been as diverse and as colourful as her characters, from teen modelling and working in factories to teaching in Japan, and a chaotic stint as the world's worst waitress. Can't wait to dig into that. With a BA in English literature and an MA in Shakespeare, she brings a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective to her writing. Her latest venture, her debut adult novel, The Cassandra Complex, known in the US as Cassandra in Reverse, is already making waves excuse me, as a Reese's Book Club pick and a BBC Two Radio Book Club pick. So please join me in giving a nice warm welcome to the incredibly talented Holly Smale. Hello, Holly.
Hi, I'm back with more questions.
You're back.
Like, what's your favorite color?
Thank you so much for being here with us. Honestly, we're so grateful, and we can't wait to dive into your career and everything else. How are you doing, Holly?
I'm excellent. Yeah, I haven't got a beer, but I have got some sort of beetroot mess here. So I think I should be very healthy by tomorrow. That's the plan.
By tomorrow. That sounds.
Tomorrow.
There you go, Chris. We've got 2 weeks to hurry it, and we can drink that and be healthy by tomorrow. I love that idea. One drink to become healthy. Amazing.
Yeah, magic.
Yeah. We were just talking before we started the show about certain regular random things, and you mentioned that you've got chill weekend plans, building a house, which is very cool. Not a big one, just a nice little.
You can kind of see it there. It's there. It's a tiny little 30-centimeter house, which is going to take me about 4 months. So that's my social life for the next 4 months. I have no excuses now. I'm just going to stay in and build a house. Done.
Yeah. Apart from the random questions you asked us, do you have any more that you could possibly ask that the chat can answer?
What else do I usually ask that makes people not want to talk to me anymore? Yeah, like, I don't know, what's your favorite year? What's your favorite year?
Interesting question.
Yeah. Again, one of those things where you task people for a question, you everything goes. I have loads of them until I need to have any, and then they've gone.
What's your favorite year? That's going to take some time to answer. Great. So
I was going to say, I'm going to do that to you now, Holly, because we've never had somebody on with an MA in Shakespeare. So what's your favorite Shakespeare quote?
Oh my God, Shakespeare quote. I'm not going to do Hamlet because that just feels really, really tired. But I might have to park on that one. It might sound like I don't know anything, but basically, as soon as you got like all of the stuff. I like Othello is probably one of my favorite. my favorites. So Put Out the Light and then Put Out the Light is probably one of my favorites. Favorite
Nice.
quotes. But yeah, no, big fan of all the tragedies. I love all the drama of the tragedies.
Who does?
Yeah, exactly. Kill as many
yeah.
people as possible.
Of course, we wouldn't be authors without wanting to kill our characters.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
exactly.
Holly, where in the world are you right now so the readers, viewers can
Yes.
learn a bit more about you?
I'm at home. I'm in a very, very messy study, which I pushed all the mess to the side so you can't see it. And yeah, I live in Hove, so I live by the sea, which is why you'll hear seagulls shrieking in the background. Yeah, and I'm doing nothing at the moment. I'm on kind of what I'm calling mini sabbatical. I feel burnt out, so I'm just going, right, okay, I'm taking a bit of like, I had too many things going on at once, and then when they all finally came to a halt, I was like, right, I need a breather, otherwise my brain's just going to frizzle and dry up.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, it's really important. Like, people don't tell you that when you're starting out, but like breaks are really, really important when you're writing. Sometimes you feel like you got to keep going, you got to keep writing, or you're gonna, I don't know, miss a boat, or you're gonna, you know, like lose your skills or something. You've got to rest. And luckily I'm naturally lazy, so we're good.
No, I couldn't agree more. We often talk about, in fact, our last interview, we mentioned about creatives having that kind of overloading sort of mental pressure, just out of expectation of ourselves to reach that kind of standard and work ethic. But yeah, you're right. To take time and invest in yourself is absolutely crucial. Yeah. So if someone's starting the writing journey, make sure you don't put that pressure on yourself too much and just enjoy it.
The less pressure you can put on yourself, because like we've all had it, you know, if you're a writer, you've got this kind of like almost like ticking clock going on inside you, where it doesn't matter like, you know, what you've achieved, there's always, you feel like you've always got more to do, like you've always gonna like have to keep going, and there comes a point you have to go, okay, I need to like stop trying to chase and just actually like sit and go, I need to watch a bit of telly for a bit, and I need to stop creating for like 10 minutes so that I can just get my juices back. But that's really hard. And like when I first started out, I just didn't stop. Like if I spent a day with not writing, I would feel like I'd somehow let myself down, or I'd let down the art of being a writer. You know, and I took it all very seriously. I do that. I don't do that so much anymore. And actually, the less seriously I take my writing, the better my writing gets. So yeah, I think that's important.
It is. That's great advice. Amazing. And you said Hove by the coast.
Brighton.
Oh, Brighton. Yes, of course.
It's next to Brighton. So yeah, it's basically Brighton. It's where everyone says Hove actually, because it's basically Brighton. But we like to make a distinction just because it has more coffee shops and stuff. So
yeah. so with that in mind, Hove being by the coast.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Is there like much of a writing scene there in terms of you can connect with other writers, and do many of your readers kind of hang out there and recognize you? Maybe how is that kind of scene for an author?
Well, Brighton is like really well known for being a very creative hub, like, but not just writers and not like authors, but like illustrators, painters, artists, musicians. It's just a very creative place. And I was in London on and off for most of my 20s and 30s, and I kind of forced myself to think I liked it, because I was like, I want to be a writer. Like that's what I've wanted since I was 4 years old. I've never deviated from that. And I kind of felt like if I wasn't in London, then I wasn't going to be taken seriously, or I wasn't going to be a real writer. Like I had to be in the beat, you know, the kind of the real kind of the center of everything. And then I suddenly realized that just it wasn't good for me, and it just wasn't making me happy. And actually coming down here where everything's a lot more chilled, and you know, everyone's just a lot more kind of free. And yeah, I have a good set of creative friends, some writers, some illustrators doing various things. And for me, it's much better. And also having the sea, I can't quite explain. Maybe because I'm a fire sign. Let's just go with that. But having this big expanse of water where it feels like I can just go breathe, and there's nothing in my way. There's nothing in my line of vision apart from the electric windmill things. But yeah, that it really helped me. It helped me creatively. So yeah, I would never move back to London. Which is actually quite important, because I think actually I was reading on Twitter the other day that, you know, sometimes writers do feel like they're London centric, right? Like, especially it feels like a lot of them are there, and actually you can create wherever you are. It doesn't have to be the capital.
Yeah, I agree. I live by the sea, and that's I feel exactly the same. It's such an outlet, and we often talk on the show. People get writer's block. They say, "What's your tip?" And for us, it's always been get out and have a walk. just being out in the fresh air and letting your mind relax is fantastic.
Yeah. Massively so. And no, I don't get recognized. I mean, I don't think I do. I mean, a couple of times I do, but it's always in a kind of like, oh my God, do you know you look exactly like my favorite author when I was a kid? And I was like, weird. Yeah, really weird. Don't know what that's about. So yeah, I don't really get recognized, and that's how I would always want it. Like, I can't imagine being at a level where you walk out and go to Tesco's in your pajamas and you've got people like watching. I mean, they are obviously looking at me, but it's because I'm in my pajamas. So but yeah, I don't know about you guys. How would you feel about that kind of like level of recognition?
I don't go anywhere in my pajamas, so you know.
But like, is it right? Like, it's something I always like asking other writers. Like, do they want recognition, like that level of recognition? There are very few authors that have that, where they can walk out in the street and be recognized. But I don't know that many who want it.
No.
No.
I kind of get it, because I'm a teacher and I work at quite a big school, and then when I go out to sort of local areas, I'll hear "sir, sir," or "hey, sir," and I'm just like, yeah, get me a baseball cap and a hoodie.
It's your moment of fame. I was just reading Kevin Bacon apparently tried it for a day to see what it'd be like in a disguise, to see what it was like being famous. He was like, hated it, had to queue up for coffees. It was just, he was like, being normal is rubbish.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, there's only I can only think of a handful of writers who are so well known that they are recognized on the street. You know.
But Holly, it sounds to me like you've got to quite an enlightened stage about writing, because, like you said, you made that joke that you took it really seriously at the beginning. But could you talk us through like how you got to that point where you realized, you know what, I need to be in Hove, I need to be by the sea, I need to relax a little bit, I need to get into a routine that's more beneficial for like my mental health, and then that balance will come. Can you sort of navigate us through how you got to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a series of lessons like that. I didn't learn all at once. You know, it was like a kind of series of similar lessons. It took me like many of them to actually get the gist of what was going on. But when I first started writing, and I was like, I think I started writing my first book when I was 22 or 23. And I spent years and years perfecting this 150,000 word adult novel, which was about death. And it wasn't a comedy. And yeah, I know it was there. And I was so wanky. It was just ridiculous. Like, I would spend, a whole chapter talking about like the wind in the grass on the field and the trees. And I was just trying to come up with these really painful, I was like, I need to be original. I need to be important. I have a master's in Shakespeare. I need to show the world how clever I am. And I got to the end of it and nobody wanted it at all. So while it was being rejected by everybody, my friend bet me a drink and was like, hey, you used to be a model when you were like a long time ago, like when I was 15, 16. Why don't you write about that? And I was like, I mean, I feel like I'm too clever for that, to be honest. I was like, I've got an MA in Shakespeare. I feel like I should be aiming for, like, no one's going to win a Pulitzer from writing about modeling. I stand by that. But I was what, 25 at this point, 24. So I thought, sod it, I'll just have a go. And because I'd had this really serious book like out of my system, this wasn't the important thing. That was my important book. That was the thing that was going to break me. Like, that was going to make me a writer. This was just like a bit of nonsense that I was doing for a beer. And the freedom that came from that, well, the second I sat down, I started writing and I felt free for the first time as a writer. I felt like I could enjoy it and I could have fun and I didn't have to worry. I could just write in the voice that I wanted to write. And that book got picked up straight away. And I think it was the first of many lessons where I found that the more I enjoyed what I was doing, the less hard I tried to be something, to be a writer that was important or clever, or, because a lot of us build our identities into the fact that we're writers, right? And we feel like we've got something to live up to. And actually, the more I realized that I could just have fun and write, the better my writing did. And that feels like it's been like an ongoing thing for me. So yeah, I felt like the further away I remove myself from like the earnest writer trope, where it's all coming from pain and anguish and darkness, and I realized that actually I write from joy. I always have done. That's where my best writing comes from, is joy, happiness, fun, laughter, and that changed my writing career overnight.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. And I'm sure we've mentioned before that, I think, Chris, you mentioned how people writing like crime fiction, for example, spend all that time writing the darkness. How do you get yourself out of that? And I suppose if you're someone who really finds himself going into that dark space to do that, you need to have the opposite. Whereas Holly, you mentioned that you like writing the humor, the like, and the life and the light. Yeah. So maybe that is a thing for someone if they are struggling in that sense, who need to come away from that to write where they're relaxed and expressive in the right way.
And also I think it's really like, Shakespeare was really, really big on the fact that, I mean, Shakespeare didn't really have genres, right? So although he had tragedies, comedies, romances, blah, 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 we as humans, we like putting things in categories, right? But there are jokes in his tragedies. There's there's tragedy in his romances. Like he combines everything because that's what humans are. No one has a life that is tragedy and no humor, and vice versa. So for me, like I can write comedy and lightness, and I can still have pathos and sadness and pain. But it's just about bringing all of those human emotions in for me. And I think that the more I just allowed myself, plus for me, in terms of what I'm putting out into the world, what my life's path is, I want to be bringing things that make people happy. And that's just, it's different for everyone. But for me, that's what makes me happy, is to make other people happy.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Love that. If you could rewind this a little bit back then, I've completely forgotten part 1 video. That's fine. We'll get to part 2 now. Rewind this back then to we mentioned at the start you were making books out of cardboard boxes. Talk to us about that and how maybe you already had at that young age that inspiration to, or thought that books were something special in your life.
Yeah, so I knew that I was going to be a writer from 4 years old because I'd never been interested in dolls, Legos, and no interest in anything, basically. I mean, I am autistic and I'm also hyperlexic. So that was something that I'd been writing since I was 2. But I knew I loved books and I loved stories, and it wasn't just books. And I think that's quite important. Like my mum was a retired English teacher, and she used to read me Byron and Shelley and Keats and Tennyson when I was 3 years old in bed. Inappropriate, completely inappropriate. These are poems about girls drowning, right? And I'm 4 years old. I'm 3 years old, sitting in bed, and my mum you'd go, "Mummy, read me the one where the girl drowns." And my mum's like, "Oh, Lord Allen's daughter, right? Here we go, kiddo." So my mum's inappropriate behavior really kind of meant that for me, stories were stories. I didn't care if it was a picture book or whether it was Tennyson. It didn't make a difference. So my love of stories was immediate. My love of writing and reading was instinctive. But I didn't know what books were, and I realized I remember the moment when I was 4 years old, just before I started primary school, that I suddenly said to my mum, like, we were reading, I think, The Faraway Tree, and I said, like, "Where did this come from?" And my mum was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, this book, where did it come from? Like, how did it get here? And I think I'd, in my mind, kind of convinced myself that it grew like a apple or a potato. I don't know why. And my mum was like, "Well, a lady called Enid Blyton, she made it up in her head and she wrote it down, and then it got printed out and published and sent all over the world millions of times, and she got really rich and really famous, and then she died." And I remember like my mum likes the simple facts, and I remember sitting up in bed, and I can genuinely remember the feeling I felt, which was just this incredible moment of thrill. I just got this chill all over me, and I went, "That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make up a story. I'm going to write it, and it's going to go millions and millions all over the world. And then I'm going to get really rich and really famous, and then I'm going to die." And like, that was my plan from 4. And I never deviated, never changed my mind. That was it. So yeah, that magical moment of realizing that these things that I was obsessed with, I could be part of and I could make, that was just life-changing for me. Yeah, I still get chills. Like it's I don't know who I'd be without it, basically, that writing.
Holly, do you think academia stifled your writing, and it took you a little bit of time to get away from that side of writing and fiction to move and find your own voice?
Ironically, I think that almost academia, I kept bumping up against it because my voice was too personal. So like my lecturers kept taking me aside and going, "This is very entertaining, but it's not really fully academic, is it?" Because I'm like coming in with a few jokes here and there. But I struggled with academic writing, and I was deputy editor on the school on the university newspaper at Bristol, and I struggled with feature articles where I had to do anything that was slightly objective. Like I had an opinion on everything. So it wasn't I wasn't that naturally good at academia. So it's almost like it was less stifling and more like I'm ready. I'm like, just let me do something that's more creative. If anything stifled my creativity, it was being bullied quite badly when I was a kid. That really dampened my ability to trust myself and to think that I had a voice that was worth listening to. And also just dating a load of dickheads. That really helped too. Because they'd be like, "Oh, are you writing? You're so cute when you're creative." And I'd go and slam my face against a wall. So yeah. So if anything, academia kind of was almost like having a racing car behind being held back with an elastic band, and then it's like, as soon as it's gone, it's like I'm out there.
Wow. And then you mentioned your modeling as a teenager, which obviously must be a pivotal kind of memory and experience that you flooded into the Geek Girl series, which is fantastic. So how did you get into, say, modeling, and then how was that an influence into your writing?
No. So what's weird is like, so I was spotted on a school trip 3 days after my 15th birthday. Really young. Like looking back, I'm 42 now, and I'm like, that was young.
Yeah.
And I just saw it as a massively unnecessary distraction from writing. But I very much wanted to. I was struggling at school. I was really not academically, but socially, and I just wanted to have a fairy tale. I wanted to change my life. I wanted to be popular, or if not popular, just accepted. So I did it because of that, and also because I'm just terrible at saying no to any kind of adventure. Like I'm curious all the time. So there was a part of me that was just like, I just kind of know how this plays out. But once it was over, when I was 17, it lasted 2 years. I never thought about it again. Just did not think about it. It never ever occurred to me that it might be a story, because for me, I was just like, I'm a writer. I'm a serious writer. I'm an important writer. Not important. I thought I was going to be. I wanted to be, and that didn't fit my ambitions, you know. So I didn't ever thought about it again, ever. And yeah, it was only when my friend bet me that drink that I even thought it was even a topic. So yeah, and I think for me, I mean, my favorite thing about comedy is when you're juxtaposing two things that just don't mix, you know, one thing against something else, which just inherently are contrasting, and taking a very geeky neurodivergent kid from school and putting them into the fashion industry, which is the world's coolest industry. It's just so much comedy there, and with that much gap, being that much older, I could see the comedy in a way that I couldn't see it when I was 15. So yeah, it just felt like a fairy tale retelling, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, Harriet in Geek Girl is a fantastically balanced character, and when you look at her neurodiverse issues and her anxiety issues, I was amazed how balanced they were in terms of they're not overwhelming to see. I saw it through the series on Netflix.
Yeah.
So it's not overwhelming in the sense of like how you balance the character from being a geek girl in the fashion industry with the issues she's got, but not lean too much in one direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well written, and like
Thanks.
how did you approach that, and was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, it's just, for me, it was just, I mean, whenever I'm writing anyone, any human, any character, like, so, and obviously Harriet is me when I was a teenager, but as we all know, we all write all the characters, right? So people always forget that as an author, you're writing every character in the book. So there's always a bit of me in every single character. But for me, it's just about, you know, you can be and have fun and do silly stuff, but as long as you keep like kind of true to the heart of what a human is. And that sometimes I know that when kids ask me when I'm doing school tours, like, how do you make a character feel real? I was like, you have to accept that they're flawed, and not in a cute way, not in like a, you know, oh, they laugh too loudly kind of way, in a this is genuinely quite an unlikable trait kind of way, because we are humans and we are often unlikable. That is what makes you human. But that we try, or that we can be loyal but sometimes selfish, and those kind of conflicting good and bad traits are what make us human, and not to shy away from them. And I think there's a danger when you're writing that I certainly fell into the problem of when I first started writing, is that ego gets in the way, because you're writing and you want your characters, and there's some part of your brain that goes, this is me on the page. Even if you're not writing about yourself, you're still putting yourself with your name on the front of the book, right? I want people to like me. I want people to think that I'm a nice person. I want people to think that I'm, like a stand-up human. And you realize that you're flattening them to do that, because to write a real character, you've got to be vulnerable, and to do that, you've got to be brave about the things that you don't like about yourself. So for me, that's how you find that balance. And often for me, I don't emote the way that I would perhaps be expected to at certain times, and it's about being honest there as well. Like, you don't always feel the way that people expect you to in that particular situation, so you've got to kind of go with the characters and go, actually, as a human, they may not react the way that you want them to for the plot. So yeah, it's just about being honest. That's what writing is for me, I think.
How have you had kind of any reactions from your Geek Girl series that maybe surprised you, or kind of reinforced the story you were trying to tell with that?
Yeah, the response has been overwhelming, and obviously when the books came out 11 years ago, that response was overwhelming, and I was just a debut that no one had ever heard of. I don't come from the industry. I don't have any contacts. Like, it was not supposed to be a hit. So that was really surprising. And having kids reach out and go, oh my God, I feel like I've been seen, or I feel like I've been, and that's me for the first time. That was amazing. And then obviously as time goes on, those readers drop a lot. But having the show has brought back this whole new audience.
Yeah.
And getting these emails that people just feel so, there's a section of the audience who are like, this is super fun and like cheesy and cringe, and you hear cringe a few times, and it's like, oh, it's just, a bit of fun about shoes and dresses. And I kind of like that, because I'm like, cool, we've got that audience who just want to watch a bit of fun. But then you've got the other audience who are like, this has made me cry, this has touched me in a way that I've never felt, because I haven't seen myself or my kid or my sister or my on screen before. And that has been like, I've cried quite a few times getting messages, which has been amazing. Because it's scary.
What was it like? Sorry, Chris, I'm asking so many questions here. I need to let you jump in.
I'm talking too much as well.
No. I was going to say,
it's too hot.
What was it like having that series come out like 11 years ago, like you said, and then having that massive influx of kind of like success and feedback, and suddenly it dropping off? When you suddenly got that nod towards being optioned, was that something you believed was going to happen? And then when it happened, did you expect that second wave to come through and have all that love?
No, I mean, I'm oblivious to most things all the time. So, like, I didn't know the book was a hit until a long time after it was a hit. I was oblivious, and I didn't know it was selling well. I wasn't really on social media. I remember going to a school tour, and I think it'd probably been out for about a year by that point. And I was like, oh, it seems to be doing okay. No one's really telling me anything. Like, I'm not getting many emails or anything, so I guess it's all right. I turned up to a school and there were just hundreds of girls screaming, like I was Rihanna. And I was like, what's happening? So I was oblivious to that most of the time. And there wasn't a sort of sharp drop off. It was just more aging out. You've got 11-year-olds and they get to the age of 19, 20, and they kind of lose interest in their books from when they were 11. Which is quite nice, because now they're like, oh, I'm sentiment watching it. It's like, it feels like nostalgia. I feel ancient. But having the show, like, it's been under option in one way or another since 2011, before it came out as a book. But it's just failed over and over and over again to either be the right team or something I was happy with. They kept trying to make it American, not this team that I'm with now, but like other teams kept trying to make it American or a musical. And I just happened to say, like, this just feels wrong, and I'm a real instinct person, and that feels wrong to me. So by the time it finally got moving, I genuinely didn't believe them. They were like, okay, we're going ahead, and I'm like, yeah, we've heard that before. Come to me when we've got, like, and they were like, no, here are the contracts. And I was like, oh, okay, it's actually happening, cool. So yeah, it felt very, very weird. And again, I'm oblivious to most things, so I feel lucky.
That's fascinating, in the sense that you weren't happy with certain things in the way that it was going to move forward. How was their reaction to you saying, which is very brave and admirable, that you said this isn't right for it yet?
Well, I just changed teams. I just said, no, you can't have it now. Like, I'm taking it back. I was like, you screwed it up too many times. I'm not doing this anymore. Don't you dare come to me and suggest that they're going to be singing in a hall in America somewhere. Like, that's not going to happen. So yeah, but I think I'm just like that as a person, to be honest. It's not even so much brave. If I have a vision for something, I don't budge ever on it. I'm like
Nice.
massively stubborn, because I don't care, basically. Like, if it gets made the way it should be, then great, but I'm not desperate. Like, if you don't want to make it, I don't care. Like, it's fine. So I think holding out to the right team, and it is the right team. Like, that has been true. That has felt right all the way through. The right directing, the right producing, the right acting. Everyone has just been amazing. And that makes a difference, because I think, sorry, I'm just waving in front of the microphone. I'm not doing a dance. I think you can feel it. I think you can. I think you watch the show and it feels like a good group of kind, talented, fun people having a really good time. And I think that is, you can feel it. And that's why I think it was successful.
Fantastic cast as well. Yeah, really good.
Oh, so good. And just nice people, like really genuinely good people, which is really great, because you don't want to have to deal with divas. I'm enough of a diva without having them as well.
Holly, my question was going to be sort of writing related, because obviously a lot of people watch this show for tips, and I really like the bit where you said about the honesty. So how do you lean into the honesty, and how do you then navigate what is too honest and what needs to be cut, and then what can stay and is a decent piece? Like, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to navigate that?
I wouldn't worry about navigating it. Just go honest, go really honest. Like, for me, as far as I'm concerned, and I found that more with Cassie, actually, because obviously, there were more boundaries when it came to writing Geek Girl, because I was writing for 11 plus. So, I had to keep it in some way. I didn't restrict myself, but there were just genre things you can't do. Like, you can't really swear, and they can't go and do drugs or have sex or anything like that. So that limited me naturally, which was fine, because I was writing from the perspective of a 15-year-old, and I wasn't doing that when I was 15 either. So I didn't feel limited. But the honesty when it came to writing Cassie as an adult was uncomfortable. Like, it was difficult, and I had to keep pushing, because I would write something and then I would go, oh, that feels uncomfortable. Like, that feels really unlikable. Am I prepared to be this vulnerable about stuff? And so you had to keep, for me, I just had to keep pushing. And even during editing, there are a couple of lines, where my editor, who I love completely, would be like, does this make her feel unlikable? And I'm like, yeah, it does, because she's a human. And I'm a dick sometimes, and that is what humans are. So it's you got to make yourself uncomfortable, I think, when it comes to honesty. It's too easy to put a mask on for your characters to wear that make them look good or feel good in front of the world, if that makes sense. And you do it instinctively, and I did it back when I first started. I just wanted my characters to be great characters. I didn't realize that the greatness is in the vulnerabilities and the flaws. So for me, it never stops being difficult. And I think that if it's not challenging, you're not really pushing yourself to be as honest as you could be.
That's really interesting. Is that one of the only challenges that you found when writing for adults, or did you find that during the sort of writing process and editing process that there was more challenges that you anticipated, and if so, what were they?
Well, there was a lot of freedom from a positive perspective, because I could finally do sex and swearing, which I wasn't allowed to do before. So I end the first chapter on the word fuck, which was very liberating. So yeah, from that perspective, it was really liberating. I think for me, and this is really, I don't know if this helps any other writer, I was always going to be an adult writer. Like, when I was from 4 years old, I had no intention of writing children's books. I wanted to write adult books. And my first attempt was an adult book. So I had always just kind of thought I would go straight into adult books, and children's books happened by accident. And then because it was successful, I just kept going. But when it came to writing adult books, I kept being really scared and putting it off and going, I'll do one more kids book, just one more, and then I'll come back to adults. And so eventually, during lockdown, I was like, okay, I need to sit down and work out why I'm so scared of adult books. Is it because I think I'm not good enough as a writer? And I was like, no, because I think that children's books are just as hard to nail as adult books. And also, I'm a great writer, so I don't worry about that. I don't have a confidence issue there. But I was like, okay, so what is it? And then I was like, I don't feel like an adult. Is the issue. I was like, I read adult books and I don't identify. And that's partly because I'm neurodivergent, and it's also partly because my life experience has been slightly different because I'm autistic, and therefore I don't necessarily have a lot of similar experiences. But in many, many ways, I don't feel like an adult. And I have spent a lot of my life pretending that I am, but hiding it. And so when it came to writing an adult book, I was kind of under the impression I'd have to pretend to be an adult to write the book. And I remember speaking to my agent when I finally hit me why I was scared. And I was like, I don't think I can convince an adult audience that I'm a real adult. I just don't think I can do that. I don't think it's beyond my skill set. And my agent went, well, surely that's the point of the book. And I was like, yeah, valid. Okay, good. And as soon as that weight of convincing everyone I was a real human and a real adult woman went away, I was free and I could just write, and all my fear went away. So I think sometimes what we're scared of, and that comes down to honesty again, sometimes what we're scared of is by being honest, we'll expose ourselves in a way that we won't be able to recover from. And actually that's where the power comes when you're writing. That's what people want. People want to see the stories that aren't about the same as everybody else. Yeah. So yeah, again, it goes back to that, enjoying it. As soon as I start loving my writing, I know I'm doing a good job.
Right. What we're going to have to do is, because we've been so engrossed in this, we're already 40 minutes in. We haven't even started part 2, which we have. No, not sorry. Brilliant. We're going to have to start part 2, but we do have a book promotion this week, Chris, which is a great thing we've restarted. If you want to advertise your book on the show, get in touch. So I'm going to play this little advert. Then we're going to do part 2, which is what's the story. So once we come back from the advert and start the part 2 video, Holly, once that's finished, can you pitch us Cassandra in Reverse?
If I can remember it. Yeah.
And then we'll talk all about your adult book that you just mentioned and how difficult that was to write, and we'll discuss the story, and we'll go from there. So here comes a trailer. This book is by John Payne, so thank you for supporting the show. And here it goes. If you like this, guys, the description has the link. Please support the authors that support this show.
A cross between James Elroy, Gregory MacDonald, and Elmore Leonard, John Payne's debut novel, Blue, Upstate, will have you biting your nails, laughing hysterically, and on the edge of your seat. When the mob purchases a bank in upstate New York, fixer Hal Shipley recommends putting his old accountant friend Alex in charge. But after years of being loyal, Alex does the one thing you never do to the mob. He steals from them. Now Hal is tapped to kill Alex and his family, but he has a different plan, and he can't pull it off without the help of Alex's wife, Carla, and his best friend, John. This is a 3-book series. Fans have left 5-star ratings. One reviewer said, "Holy Mother of the Written Word, is Blue, Upstate a great book." This is one of those stories that will suck you in and keep you turning the page until you finish. Because of its size, 500-plus pages, I thought it would take me about a month, but I finished it in 5 days, if that tells you anything. Use the link in the description to buy this book and to support the author that has supported this show.
There you go.
I want to know how to write a book in 5 days. That's what I want to know. Get them on here.
A book that size as well. Jeez.
I know. I mean, it does happen. It's never happened to me, but it does happen. So, keep on.
That's the book by Jonathan Payne's. That is one of 3 in that series. All available now on Amazon. Link in the description and in socials. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Go and check that out. So what we're going to do, Holly, part 2. I'm going to play the video because we missed part 1 video. But here's part 2 video, which is what's the story? And then when we come back, can you pitch us Cassandra in Reverse? Yeah. Here we go. There you go. What's the story?
What's the story? Right. So Cassandra in Reverse, which, as you mentioned, was published as Cassandra Complex in the UK, Cassandra in Reverse in America. Then it was a Reese pick and everything got really confusing and everyone went, I can't handle 2 titles anymore. So it's now this in everywhere, right? It's now this. So basically it's about Cassandra Penelope Dankworth, who is not having a great time in her life. She doesn't really have any friends. She's just been dumped by her boyfriend. She's never had a long-term relationship. And she's just been fired from her job, which she hates. So she discovers that she has the ability to go back in time. but only in short amounts. So she can hop back in very small kind of quantities and tweak things. She decides to try and use it to try and sort her life back out. So I won't do any more spoilers. And it's not the same as Groundhog Day, which someone thought it was. She doesn't do the same day over and over again. She does the same day twice, and then she completely deviates and just starts tweaking. Because for me, what was really fun about the concept was that Cassie's very clearly autistic as well, and I say that in the book. I think we all do this as humans. I don't think this is an actually neurodivergent quality. I just think it might be heightened in neurodivergent people. That, we are in so many situations where we wish we could go back and do things differently because we want to know how things would unravel if they did. And I kept thinking, if I had the ability to go back in time, what would I use it for? Would I use it to go save the world? Those great time travel stories where people go and jump in front of buses and stuff. I was like, no, absolutely not. First of all, I just don't think I'm that brave. Second of all, I would be scared of screwing up too much, right? I feel like, so I would be using it in really lazy ways to if I can't be bothered to find the remote control for the TV, just I missed that, I'll skip back a few seconds. Or if I have a conversation that goes wrong, I want to undo it and say something that is better or less offensive or whatever. So Cassie starts to tweak. And I think you can probably see coming that it doesn't quite work out as she expects.
Yes.
But it's for me, it was just a joy to write, and a real joy to kind of ask that question of myself. Do I want to change anything? Should I want to change anything? And really, is she trying to change her past, or is she trying to change herself? Because that is what really, it boils down to. And yes, Reese Witherspoon liked it. Not. I'm just going to leave that there. Just going to leave that there.
Yeah,
she's pretty cool. So I'm happy with that.
We'll get onto the story in a second, but obviously having BBC Radio 2, Reese Witherspoon picking this for the book of the month, how did that feel for you? Having that doubt initially that not that you weren't up to the task of writing an adult book, but you had those fears. How did that kind of feel then when you had that recognition?
To be honest, relief. I wrote Harriet and Geek Girl for a really long time, and I did write 3 books afterwards, and they didn't sell. Anyone who and I was embarrassed to talk about that at the beginning of this kind of writing career, but eventually you get to a point you're like, sometimes it happens, and it's actually really important to tell writers that your career is not it's not a trajectory that's smooth. You can do really, really well and sell millions of books, and then you can do a book series that nobody wants, and you have to pivot. And I had to pivot into adult books, and I was terrified because you do get slightly snidey comments saying one trick pony, she can do one thing, and I kind of believed it too. I was like, maybe I can only do one thing. Maybe I can only do Harriet. So writing Cassie and then it being a hit with Reese Witherspoon, BBC Radio and stuff was such a relief, because I was like, if I never write again, I know that I can do more than one thing. I'm not a one-trick pony. No one can ever say that again.
However, don't take away from, even if it was a one-trick pony, that was an amazing one trick.
Oh, it was a good trick. Yeah. For sure. And I would never, I remember watching ages and ages ago, quite early in my career, Elizabeth Gilbert doing a TED talk about I'm not comparing myself to Elizabeth Gilbert, because she's obviously but her talking about the success of Eat, Pray, Love, and how that, after that, you suddenly think, what do I do now? Because I'm never going to create that level of success again. You're just not. And there was a point with Geek Girl where I had to accept it's highly, highly, highly unlikely that I ever do anything again that hits the same success rate as Geek Girl. And am I going to be okay with that? Or I'm going to beat myself up every time I try and create something new? And you just have to let go and go, actually, it's okay that it's not successful. I can keep writing and keep loving it. And it doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just means that I was lucky enough with my first thing that I don't want to spend the rest of my life chasing that sort of goal again.
So,
Holly,
go on, Chris.
Sorry, I was going to say, Holly, we've asked this question a few times with different writers. Have you had that moment yet where you look back at the books you have written and gone, yeah, this is what it was about, but oh my God, this was actually what it was about? You don't have to tell us what it was that you sort of realized, but have you had that yet?
I think I had the ultimate that. I wrote Geek Girl for 8 years. And if you include before it was published, 12 years in the running. And for the entire time, I kept thinking, I'm writing about this girl who's me as a teenager. She's different and she doesn't know why. I need to really communicate to the reader why she feels like an outsider, why she feels like she doesn't fit in, like why her brain works differently. And it took until I was 39 years old to turn around and go, I'm autistic, and so she. But the world worked it out about Harriet before I worked it out about myself. So I was diagnosed because people were coming to me and going, Harriet's autistic, right? And I'm like, no, because she's me, and that would be mad. Which is really embarrassing. And like the National Autistic Society said, you know, that Harriet is reading as autistic. So yeah, the ultimate realizing that I was writing about an autistic girl, not knowing that she was autistic because I was autistic. And the realization that came because of that, because of her, because of Harriet, that changed my entire life and the way I saw myself. So I think that's probably the ultimate version of realizing that you're writing about something that you don't know about it until right at the end. So yeah, it's
when I was going to say, can you talk us through that moment when you realized that, like not the actual, 2 minutes or whatever, but the sort of aftermath of that? How do you digest that and sort of then, when it's such a big shock in your life that, you've suddenly realized that
it's got slow motion. I feel like it's a slow dance.
That'd be really interesting.
Sorry, Chris, you went really slow motion, then you went really fast, and we heard at the end. So can you do that again, please?
So I heard the bit where you said about how do you process that? Like what like once you've got that, is that the gist of it?
Yeah, and then obviously like the sort of aftermath and what you did sort of afterwards and how it linked. And you were saying slow dance, so I was kind of slow dancing as well.
It was lovely. It was lovely. We appreciated it. Yeah, no, I think people, the outside perspective is always different to what's going on internally, right? And I think that because I came out as autistic in the Times magazine, in like a spread on the magazine, it made it look like I'd gone and got a diagnosis and then woken up the next day and gone, hello, I'd like to speak to the Times. And that is not at all what happened. It took a good year between me realizing, then another 4 months before I got a diagnosis, and then another 9 months to process it, because my brain exploded, and it was also during lockdown, so I had a lot of time to explode and implode personally in my house. It wasn't I mean, I'm at a point now in my diagnosis journey where 4 or 5 years in, I'm comfortable with myself. I am happy talking about it. But for that first chunk of time, I was shocked. I felt ashamed. I still didn't really know much about it. I felt like this was evidence that there was actually something wrong with me, which is not how I feel now, but it was how I felt at the time. And I think that's okay. Like, again, being honest, you have to be honest about the emotions that you have, and they're all acceptable. So yeah, and it made me look at my entire life and Harriet, my entire book series, my career had been built on this thing I didn't quite know about myself. The elephant in the room was autism. So yeah, it completely exploded my brain, and it took me quite a long time to put it back together again, and it's been a work in progress. I feel like it's pretty much there now, and now I can worry about other stuff instead, like a normal person. But yeah, it did feel like it changed everything in a really big way for me.
Could I ask that what advice would you give to someone who might find out something in a similar manner to how you did, and what advice would you give them, knowing that you've gone through that experience and you're now on a position where you are obviously very acceptant of it and you've used it to help other people? What advice would you give to them?
There is no right or wrong way to react. Like, that's the thing. And there is no it's okay to feel negative emotions, because obviously by the time I was talking about it publicly, I'd reached a point where I wanted to celebrate and I wanted to talk about it, but I was getting a lot of messages saying, I feel really bad because you seem really positive and like celebratory about it, and actually I feel angry, I feel ashamed, I feel guilty, or I feel whatever it is, all the negative emotions, and I felt all of those as well. And I think you don't need the extra pressure on yourself of thinking I should be feeling this way or I should be feeling that way, especially when you're neurodivergent. Often processing emotion takes longer anyway. Like, it's literally part of the part of the neurology. So you've just got to let yourself take the time you need and feel what you need to feel. And if you feel angry about it for the rest of your life, then that is your prerogative. So I think, don't force yourself just because you've got arseholes like me out there going, celebrate, like that kind of thing. That's the way I have chosen. That's my path that I have chosen, is that I want to celebrate my brain. But if you don't feel that way about your brain, there's nothing wrong with that. So it's
what you've also done is shed light on so many young people who might have issues in that same sense, and giving them hope and light and someone to connect with, as you mentioned before. So not at all. I think you mentioned you liked helping people, and I think you had done exactly that. So I think it's fantastic.
It matters. It matters.
Yeah,
and
it does matter.
Representation, whether it's book or TV or anything, we bang on about it a lot in the writing industry, but it does matter. And I remember when I got my diagnosis and I was in a real bad place for about 6 to 7 weeks. I couldn't leave the house. Well, I wasn't allowed to legally because of lockdown, but I didn't want to. And I was in a complete mess. And I started watching Grey's Anatomy. And Christina in Grey's Anatomy is very, very clearly autistic. They pretty much say it without quite saying it. But I was in a really dark place, and watching the show and thinking Christine is one of my favorite characters of all time, any TV show ever, thinking this woman is a badass. She's amazing. And if I am anything like her, I've got nothing to be ashamed of. And so that representation changed the way I saw myself. So having a character out there that can do that, whether it's in book or in TV for other people, feels like passing it forward. It feels like that's something I can do, which can make people feel like they're not alone. Because I felt alone for most of my childhood. That feels special.
It is very special. Right. Sorry, we're going to have to push on for community questions. So we've got a couple come in already. If you've got questions for Holly, please send them in now. Me and Chris will ask very quickly a couple of staple questions. We won't rush it too much. Assuming, Holly, you're okay to stay for...
I'm here forever. I won't...
forever. We will finish this in 10 years. No, please send your questions in now. We'll get on with our staple questions. I will play part 3 video. It's your chance to ask Holly about her writing. You can ask us random questions like what... Maybe we can answer what year you'd like to travel to. We still haven't answered that.
I don't know why I mentioned that. I can't even think what 1981. I get to start all over again. That's the year I was born. But yeah. I mean, honestly, I've been doing children's events for 11 years, so I have had every single weird question that's ever been asked. Ooh. So hit me with whatever you want.
Yes. Ooh. Excellent. Here's part 3. Send your questions in, guys. So, Chris, kick us off with our staple questions, please.
Yeah, so one of the first ones that we have is, if you could take any character from fiction and make that character your own, who would you choose and what would you do with them?
Sam Hamilton from East of Eden, and I would marry him. Is the answer to that. I love him. He's just do you know him as a character? East of Eden's really one of my favorite books. And it's fascinating on lots of different levels. But Samuel is like the kind of, he's based on the grandfather of Steinbeck. So he's just brilliant. He's just kind and funny and sharp and interested and curious about the world. And I love him. So yeah, him. That's, what would I do then? Marry him? There we go.
I'm going to ask you a question there. That's a deviation, because you said you'd marry him. So he seems to be the ideal person in your mind. Yeah. But you mentioned before we came on the show about speed dating. So if you were to marry somebody after a minute of meeting them, what qualities would they have to have and present for you to entertain that idea?
For a minute, they would have to be very funny in a minute, and I think in a minute I just had to be superficial, and they just had to be really hot. I don't think I could get any further than that, as long as they're just not. I mean, obviously they need more qualities than that going beyond a minute, but for a minute, that's what I'd have to base it on. But the reality is kindness. That's the thing I look for in people, is kindness, and it is not necessarily as common a quality as it should be.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. If you could take the ending of anything, whether this be a TV show, a film, or a novel, and change the ending, what story are you going to change and why?
I've come up with a really cliche, and I think that I was saying that earlier. By next week, I'll have gone, oh, I've got such a better answer. But the one that just niggles me, like it niggles half of the planet, is the Game of Thrones ending, which I don't dislike for the same reason a lot of other people do, actually. I don't know if we're allowed to do spoilers here. I mean, it did come out quite a long time ago. I don't feel like it's completely...
Yeah, go for it.
I actually had no problem, and I've watched the whole series 4 or 5 times, so I do know a lot of what's going on. But Daenerys, her going mad was absolutely part of the build. Like that was ingrained in her character from the beginning. And anyone who says that it wasn't seeded immediately with the Mad King, the Mad Queen, like, you know, this is part of their sort of Targaryen inheritance. Like that was always in there. And her kind of like rise to, you know, to power, the giddiness of power that was going to her head, her need to be adored. And if you can't be adored, it's very dangerous because then you'll be hated. And that's it's almost like Homelander in The Voice, right? I would rather be loved, but if I can't, I'll be hated, I'll feared, right? So I think Daenerys's thread, fine. That worked for me, and I thought it was powerful. But give the crown to Bran? What? Why would anyone do that? No, I didn't spend, you know, hours of my life, months of my life watching a show to watch that boring asshole get the crown. I'd rather it went to Sansa, if anyone. So yeah, that I wasn't happy with that ending. And I don't want it, Jon Snow just going back into the snow and into the nowhere. It all felt rushed. It felt like it wasn't closed. It felt like they hadn't done the proper job of it. They'd introduced too many threads and questions that they hadn't answered. So that's what I would like to be redone.
I think we all would. There's a lot of people that would like that redone. So good answer.
Yeah. I'm just turning up. My Do Not Disturb has decided to turn itself back off again, which is really annoying. That's why I had a little email bling. Sorry.
Anna says, comparing Daenerys to Homelander is one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. Thank you.
So
imagine, a crossover with that series. That'd be crazy.
It's power, you know, and that's the thing. That's what's so interesting about those two shows. It's about power, and always has been, like, you know, for all of the characters. And whether you've got the ability to shoot lasers and fly, or whether you've got a dragon, like, you know, it's power and what it does to people. And you only have to look around at real life, post-elections, pre-elections, to know that power is extremely destructive. So yeah, that's the boys Game of Thrones crossover that you never knew you needed.
Yeah, I'd love a dragon.
Me too.
Chris, ask if you what color would your dragon be?
Well, I have this conversation regularly with my niece. She's 7. We both decided she'd quite like a rainbow one. I would quite like one that was like mermaidy, a little bit like kind of shimmery purples and greens. Maybe a white glittery one. I don't know. I'd quite like a range of them, like, you know, like shoes, like for different outfits.
Yeah.
I get a different dragon depending on what I'm wearing. That's what I'd like.
I'd have a deep blood red dragon. I'm Welsh.
Oh.
That's the stab.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can see that you need that.
Chris,
I love this question from one of the community members. So I'm going to ask it. If you could take any Shakespeare character and put them into one of your plots of one of your books, which character would you choose, and which book and why?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, the obvious one would sort of be a Beatrice from Much Ado About Nothing, who's quite sassy and strong. But then again, it wouldn't be that much of a contrast. I kind of want like someone that was just really different, like Hamlet. To put Hamlet in like Geek Girl, everyone would just be like, dude, get on with it. Stop fanning about so much. I mean, we ironically, because obviously the girl that plays Harriet in the show also plays Alicent Hightower in the House of Dragon, right? So there was an interesting question asked to her, like, what would it look like if Alicent came to Geek Girl world, or if Harriet went to Dragon's world? And I was like, death for sure. 5 seconds in. Yeah. Boom, gone. Or she'd become the hand of the, sorry, that wasn't the Shakespeare question, but yeah, I think I'd like to take a character that was just really, really, really contrasting. Like, I don't know, King Lear would be fun, or Goneril Reagan. Now that would be super fun. Yeah,
Nice.
Goneril and Reagan together. Put them in Geek Girl 1 and see what happens.
Wow. Thank you for that
Nice.
question. We've got one here from, try and get the name right, Relaxation. Thank you for your question. She's got a couple in there, so we'll get through those. What advice would you give to querying writers? So many agencies expect comp with other books and authors, and I wouldn't even know where to start to apply for this to my book. Where to apply this to my book?
Yeah, so I was actually tweeting about this the other day, because I don't know why the book world needs to be so restrictive. Because when I was doing this, when I was applying for an agent, it was in 2009, and because I was a jumped up 20 something, I didn't pay any attention to any rules. I just thought I was above it anyway, and I just kind of did what I wanted. So the idea of comparing it to another author that was living, that it just made no sense to me. I was like, why would I do that? I'm an original. Why would I give myself, like, why would I, like, dampen myself down by trying to say that I'm similar to someone who did a book 6 months ago? That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And I compared Geek Girl to the Anne of Green Gables and the Diary of Adrian Mole. They were my comps for Geek Girl, both of which the authors were dead by that point. And it worked, right? And it wasn't just the comp for my agent, it was the comp that my agent gave the publisher. So, and it worked, right? It went to auction in for 5 publishers, I think, at that point. So it bothers me that this restrictive way, it's a creative industry, and maybe there's a reason behind it where, it helps them pitch and it helps marketing meetings and stuff. That's their job. It shouldn't be our job as creatives to apply that to, like, if your story is a cross between Hamlet and I don't know, Star Wars, then say that. I don't feel like we should have to try and limit it to the way, just to try and kind of make it fit what we're being told, which is super unhelpful. I'm really sorry, because I don't want to get blamed because someone didn't get an agent because they should follow my crap advice. I just think
yes for Holly. Love that.
Yeah. I was going to say, Holly, do you think, though, thinking back to Shakespeare, obviously I don't get the opportunity to talk about Shakespeare a lot with people that come on the show because they've not studied Shakespeare or don't have much of an interest other than GCSE sort of English. But obviously he's pretty famous for what he wrote, but he also adapted a lot of his ideas from stories that came before him and things like that. Do you think there's some element of that happening in sort of that need for, it's a bit like this because you've got that popularity there and things like that?
And to be honest, I think maybe the reason they asked for it in the publishing world, and again, I'm not in publishing, but what I would say is that they do like to play it safe, generally, publishers, right? In an annoying way, as in they like to go into their marketing meetings and go, this book is like this book, and this book sold this many copies, and it has a cover like this, and if we market it like that, we could be looking at selling this many and this many book things, which for me just crushes the art and the life out of any kind of book from my perspective. Like, we should be doing what we want to do, and it's their job to find a way to sell that, even if it's different. And I would say that most of the books that do really, really well are new, as in they haven't been done. But I do think there is a need to copy, and I think it's that safety thing, because you're right, Shakespeare based most of his stories, like, people don't realize that Hamlet was based on a story called Hamlet. Like, it's not, he didn't make up Hamlet. Like, Romeo and Juliet was it was a hero and Lysander from Greek myths. So basically, is it hero and Lysander? No, I think it's Piraeus and Thisbe. Anyway, my point being, he took a lot of his ideas, and I think there is still in publishing that need for people to feel safe about what they're buying. Like, we're spending this much money and we want to know we're going to get these returns, which is infuriating, because a lot of the times writers are writing something that it hasn't been done, and we don't know if it's going to work, and that is what changes the book industry. That's what starts genres, it starts trends. So I find it frustrating, because I have no interest in comparing anything I've ever written to something that has been out recently. Like, that's just not what I want to do or will do ever. So yeah, I would say stick to your guns on that, but don't blame me.
I'm going to ask a twofold question now. Yeah. What do you think is Shakespeare's originality?
Yes.
And if a reader was coming to your books, what's your originality? What are they going to learn from you?
Are you asking me to compare myself to Shakespeare? Because it does feel like that is what you're asking, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. I've been waiting my whole career to be asked why I'm like Shakespeare. No, I mean, with Shakespeare, again, he was taking those plots, basic plots, but he was making them something new, and he was making them something fascinating and that lasted forever. Shakespeare is not a man of an age, but for all time, right? He did that by understanding humans. Humans haven't changed since Shakespeare. And if you read Shakespeare, his characters, they react like humans. They have the same jealousies, the same loves, the insecurities, the fears, and obviously beautiful language as well. But for me, it was the emotions that he managed to get really right that have meant they don't age, because they are the same emotions we feel now. So for me, Geek Girl, I started writing in 2009, and it's now 2024, and it's still selling, and it's just gone onto Netflix, because a human is a human. And if you're writing a story where the human and the emotions are true and real, that doesn't age. It doesn't matter if, kids get older and you get a new generation or whatever, Star Wars will always be Star Wars, because those truths, those stories have that integrity and that authenticity of emotion in them. And that is why I am like Shakespeare. And you can take that.
Yeah, basically the
same.
What a great answer.
Thanks.
Amazing. Right, we're gonna have to push on, because are you happy to read a bit at the end, Holly?
Yes.
So what we'll do is we'll ask one more question. I cannot not ask this question. So we'll ask this question, and then we'll finish up with the reading, if that's all right.
Okay.
And this question's from Anya. Anya's great, so thank you, Anya. If you could murder someone by dinosaur, which dino would you choose as your assassin? What a blinking great question.
Oh, no, it's too good, because now my mind is full of like ways I could kill people by dinosaur. My favorite dinosaur is Diplodocus, and that has been my favorite since I was a little girl, and I wrote to the Natural History Museum to tell them that. I was enraged by the fact that it was Diplodocus. They were trying to change the way you said it. So I would use the Diplodocus, because I feel like together we would make a really strong team. And although they're vegetarian, there would be no eating, but there would be a lot of stamping on and crushing.
Oh yeah, but that's more brutal than being eaten by something with big teeth, right?
Yes, it is.
Evil. Love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing.
Diplodocus.
Brilliant.
I've totally lost my place on what I was.
It's all right. Before you do that, Chris, I think you might have throw in the morbid question, before you go, I'd love to say thank you so much. You're absolutely amazing, great inspiration. Love Geek Girl. People, if you haven't checked it out, please do so. And support Holly. We can you find her on our Twitter and stuff. The links to her socials. Go and follow. Great follow.
I do live there. I live online now. That's where I am most of the time.
Yeah.
I've had the
Holly,
best
I feel
time.
like. Oh, thank you. I feel like you're going to relate to this question, because it's the final sort of one that we have, but it is about morality. So you're on your deathbed. You're looking back at your writing career. What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
I think I've touched on it. I think if I've made someone's day better, like obviously you want to have an impact on a life, but if you can't do that, just make someone's day a little bit better. Like if I have left my life and I have made one person's life a day a bit better than it was before, if I didn't exist, that's a life well spent. Like that is a good life. And I'm not having kids. I'm child free. And so Harriet is my child, and I feel like leaving her behind in the world to live when I am gone, to keep making people feel better, is something that I've done a good job with my life, basically.
Amazing.
Beautiful answer.
Thank you. I'm still not sure what I'm going to read. I always get lost on these things. I'm like, yeah.
Holly's just going to read this out, guys. Please like the show, share it around, leave some comments, and support Holly. At the end of the reading, we'll play the goodbye video. And from us, thank you and good night.
Yeah, and Holly, when you finish your reading, if you just give us a wave, we'll wave as well, and then we'll end it.
Okay. The panic as I try and find the passage that I'm looking for is starting to rise in a really uncomfortable way. All right. I'm just going to read the first paragraph then, because that's easy and it's the first paragraph. So, where does a story start? It's a lie, the first page of a book, because it masquerades as a beginning, a real beginning, the opening of something, when what you're being offered is an arbitrary line in the sand. This story starts here. Pick a random event, ignore what came before it, or catch up later. Pretend the world stops when the book closes, or the resolution isn't simply another random moment on a curated timeline. But life isn't like that, so books are dishonest. Maybe that's why humans like them. And it's saying that kind of shit that gets me thrown out of the Fenterman Road Book Club. So there you
Amazing.
go. Done.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, saying thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.